fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
It's the end of the year, which means two things for a lot of us. Well, all of us have taxes coming. But if you're a creative in the gig economy, you are trying to figure out your health insurance for next year.
Yep, if you're a freelancer, creator, or anyone working outside a traditional job, it can feel like a full-time gig on its own.
This week, we've got a different kind of episode. We're talking with health policy expert Charles Gaba about the changes to the Affordable Care Act.
We get into how to protect yourself from surprise tax bills. Wish I'd heard this sooner. What's changed and why coverage is both more accessible and more confusing than ever.
The creative economy is broken, but some people are still making it work. We're here to find out how. This week, we're literally like, it's the nuts and bolts of finding out how. I'm Anna Marie Cox.
And I'm Open Mike Eagle. And this is Past Due.
Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is our first pretty much entirely service-oriented episode because I know our audience is full of people who are on the ACA marketplace, right? Mike, you?
I think so, but I'm the jury's out, honestly.
You may not be re-enrolling. You may just go without.
I have to figure out what my income's weird, and my access to resources is weird, and my taxes are weird, and I just had a weird experience with ACA this year, and I have to figure out how to navigate all of that going forward because whatever I did this year did not work.
Okay, so
we can put a pin in that and come back to it.
Let's put a pin in that, and maybe we should start with some basics.
Okay,
right? And I think the thing I've talked about on this show, and that people who are even paying mild attention to politics may know, is that it's different this year, right? Like that's what the fight in Congress was supposedly about.
Right.
And a few things are happening. One, and this is just my personal knowledge, and then I want you to like lay out specifics or corrections. Enrollment is different this year. Open enrollment is different. And that's not having anything to do with the last fight. That's something that carried over from the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, as I recall.
The open enrollment period for this year is actually not changed. At least the dates have not changed from last year. The Trump administration wanted to cut it back, but they in the end they decided to bump it out or to keep it where it is for one more year. So in 2027, it's going to be shorter, but for 2026, it's the same deadlines and time frame as it has in the last couple of years.
Okay. So that means December 15th for January 1st coverage. In most states, except for?
In Idaho, December 15th is the final deadline it's for January 1st coverage, but that's it. There is no later deadline. In states like Massachusetts, it would be December 23rd and January 23rd. In Virginia, the final deadline is January 3rd. I mean, there's a variety for the January deadlines there. It's all over the place. But for December deadlines, it's December 15th in Idaho, December 23rd in Massachusetts, and December 31st, New Year's Eve, in Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, and Rhode Island. So that's for coverage starting in January. For coverage starting in February, you have until January 15th in most states, except for Idaho. But you also have until January 23rd in Massachusetts, January 30th in Virginia for some reason, and then California, DC, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island, it's January 31st. And that's for coverage starting on February 1st. And, the first piece of advice I always give people, I have like this big, enrollment guide every year, and it has like a dozen, key things. And that's the very first one is, I say, don't delay, get covered sooner rather than later so you don't miss the deadline. This year, there's a big caveat to that, which is because of this, the shutdown and the battle over the enhanced subsidies, a lot of people and a lot of, brokers, like insurance brokers and stuff, are advising people to actually hold off a little bit. Don't jump in right away. And we're already, over 2 weeks in at this point. A lot of people are holding off in the hopes that, well, what if there is a last minute, deal to extend those enhanced subsidies. So a lot of people are holding off on that. And so, I'm doing that myself. My wife and I, we are both self-employed ourselves. We're both on the exchange, and we have not, re-enrolled for next year ourselves. So I understand waiting, but you also don't want to wait until the last minute either, because again, things happen. You don't want to, lose your internet connection, just before the deadline, or, something else happens, you get sick, whatever. And also because you don't want to overwhelm the servers. I assume you both remember 13 years ago or 12 years ago, the first open enrollment period with healthcare.gov, infamously crashed the second that it launched because it was totally overwhelmed. Well, these days it has much greater capacity. They've worked out all the bugs. It works pretty seamlessly. It can handle a huge volume, but there's huge and then there's huge. If you have 20 million people trying to enroll on, December 14th, that's probably going to overwhelm the servers. Plus, I have no idea. I've not been able to get a straight answer as to whether the support staff, the phone staffers and support staffers at healthcare.gov, is that up to snuff? I don't know. I don't know if Elon Musk went in there and, started using his chainsaw on, with his Doge boys, started hacking away at the healthcare.gov staff. I haven't heard anything that he has, but I also don't know that he hasn't. So again, I understand waiting, just don't wait too long, is what I say.
Quick, just logistical question. Is healthcare.gov the most appropriate place to find out the information for the state that you live in? Is that the most reliable place to go for the information that a person needs in the location they are?
Well, so healthcare.gov is the official federal ACA exchange. And that's where people who live in around 30 states, including mine, I'm here in Michigan, that's what we use to enroll and also to review and compare all the plans and all the different policies and get your subsidies and all that. If you're eligible, there are about 20 states that each have their own ACA exchange website. They're called state-based exchanges. The biggest, California is the biggest one. It's called Covered California. Massachusetts has their own. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, they all have their own, and they have different names. And in fact, Illinois just became the latest state. They just launched their state-based exchange this year, so about 2 weeks ago. And so in those states, you would go to your state exchange. Now, if you live in one of those states, if you go to healthcare.gov and you plug in your zip code, then it will tell you, like, if you're in one of the 30 states, you'll stay there. If you're in one of the states, that has their own exchange, you'll enter your zip code, and then it'll say, "Oh, here's where you go for that," and it should redirect you, it'll tell you go to Covered California, go to the New Mexico's is called Be Well, and it'll have a link to take you to those websites. And each of those exchanges, those are the official state government exchanges for those sites. Now, there are also there are authorized third-party sites and brokers that basically, it's a private company that's hooked into, they have a portal that's hooked into the federal system, which you can also get. But again, if I start getting to that becomes confusing about, well, is this one authorized? Is it not authorized? I would mostly advise people to stay with the official government site.
So that brings up a question, which I don't know how much time we want to spend on, but whether or not you should use a broker. Like, they're free brokers, right? They're brokers you can use who will not charge you personally anything
Correct.
for help navigating the site.
Yes.
Is that something that it's worth exploring for someone?
Yeah, well, there are brokers, and then there's what's called navigators, and the navigators are people who have been trained specifically for ACA enrollment, and they're assisters. They're there to assist you and help you navigate the system. Navigators are not allowed to guide you towards one specific. They don't work for the insurance companies. They don't get a commission or anything based on that. They just work for the exchanges, right? Or they're through a nonprofit grant organization that has received a grant to be a navigator. They're supposed to be unbiased and such. But also they're also authorized brokers, and again, both healthcare.gov as well as each of the state exchanges, they'll have a section on there, get help or something. There'll be a link, and it'll give you a list. You enter where you live, and it'll say, okay, here's some authorized brokers or navigators that can help you out. And again, those are all supposed to be completely on the up and up, and they're supposed to just provide you with useful information and help explain all this stuff. Assuming, that there's no, nothing nefarious behind the scenes, which again, this year, I'm fairly confident that it's all still legit, but you never know. So yeah, the brokers, private brokers, they do receive a commission, but they get a commission regardless of which policy you go with. I mean, it might be larger from one carrier than another. I don't know the details of that. But my general understanding is that they should be, fairly trustworthy, as long as they are an authorized broker or agent. If they are not authorized, if they're not, have a stamp of approval, then I cannot vouch for them in any way, shape, or form. And that's also why I'm not going to start listing, because there are several of these third-party authorized websites. But if I start listing those, then people are going to get confused about, which ones are okay and which ones aren't. And I'd rather not, go down that road.
So the way that I did it, and I haven't actually picked my plan for this year. Mm-hmm. I have subsidies. I made taxable income of around $40,000 last year. So that put me for like $600 worth of subsidies. So with subsidies, I was able to afford a really good healthcare plan for about $300 and something a month. It is now for the same or equivalent plan. Actually, that plan doesn't exist, but for what I'm told is an equivalent plan, it is now $821 a month with worse deductibles, right? So I decided to look for a new plan.
Okay.
Right. And I'm estimating about the same amount of income, So the first piece of advice that I got that might be relevant to Mike too, to get into what may have happened with him, was to not actually think about my income for the whole year, but to just estimate it for like the first quarter or first 6 months, and be ready to go in and re-up it if my income looked like it was trending upward. Right.
Yes. So yeah, the exchanges are designed. So what the tax credits are, they're officially called advanced premium tax credit, APTC. And the advanced part is what these basically are is you're getting a tax break for 2026, but you're getting it in advance of. So, so instead of having to wait until 2020, you file your taxes for 2020, in 2027 for 2026. Instead, you're getting the tax credits, as you go. So technically speaking, there should be, if you log into your account, and the interface will differ depending on which state you're in. But on healthcare.gov, there's like a slider thing where you can say, it'll say, okay, you're eligible for this much per month. Do you want all of it? Do you want none of it up front? And when you can take it all at the back end, when you file your taxes in early 2027, or you can say I want half now and half later. You can say what portion you want up front. The vast majority of people take it all up front because if you could afford to wait a year and a half to get it, then you probably, you could probably afford to pay full price in the first place, right? And you wouldn't necessarily need the subsidies. So my guess is a good 90%, take it all up front. Some people might, split some of it and all that, but yeah, you can also log into your account mid-year. And in fact, you're supposed to, if you have a significant income change during the course of the year, maybe you get a bonus windfall, maybe you're going to come up short, whatever, higher or lower, you can go in and you can adjust your estimated income for the year. Let's say that the first half of the year, it's about what you expected. And so you're receiving whatever subsidies you are for the first 6 months. But then you discover that, it looks like the second half of the year, I'm not going to be doing nearly as well. And it's going to be, my income's going to be lower than expected. You can adjust that. And what will happen is the subsidies will increase for the second 6 months, for the balance of the year. Or if you expect that your income is going to be higher than you expected, you enter that, and that way, the subsidy will be lower, but it also means that you don't have to pay back when you file your taxes in the following spring. Now, having said that, I would always advise people to overestimate rather than if you're not sure, I would assume that you're going to make more rather than less, because it's a lot better to overestimate and then you get a larger tax refund, when you file taxes, than it would be to underestimate and then you have to pay a chunk of it back when you file your taxes, especially because as we were discussing a little bit earlier, there are two major changes that are happening this year, in addition to the subsidies becoming a lot less generous for, across the board. Number one is that if you end up earning more than 4 times the federal poverty level, which is, if you're single, for a single person, no kids, that's $62,600 next year. Okay. If you end up earning more than that, then you will no longer be eligible for any subsidies at all. So like if you're even $1 over for your modified adjusted gross income, or MACHI income, when you file your taxes for 2026 and early 2027, if that comes in over that threshold, you're not eligible for anything. So even if you thought you were eligible for like $1,000 a month or $500 a month in subsidies, if you go over that 4 times 400% cutoff, you would have to pay all of it back. And that's the other big change, is that up until now there have been limits on, like, if you underestimate your income and you have to pay some of it back, there were limits on how much of it you had to pay back. Well, now there's no limit. You could potentially, some people would have to pay some back. Some people may have to pay all of it back. And so in theory, you could get hit for, like, you owe $12,000 and, you have to pay that back that much or whatever. That's the other big thing that you have to keep in mind. So I would always, and that's going to be true at any level, even below 400, you might have to pay back more than you expected, but you would still be eligible for some subsidies. If you're over that 400% cutoff, you're immediately, it's called the subsidy cliff for a reason, because you're literally diving off a cliff because you have to pay it all back.
And that 400%
is $62,600.
That's 400% the poverty level?
Yes, the poverty level for one person is $15,600.
Oh my God, that's right. Shit. So,
yeah, for 4 times for a single person. Now, for a family of 4, it's around, I think, around 130,000 for a family of 4 would be 4 times the poverty level.
Okay.
So that's the big one. Now, here's
super depressing, but
here's the good news, such as it is.
Okay.
The good news, such as it is that if you earn a little over 4 times, within a few thousand of that, then there are ways to legally get your MACHI, or adjusted gross income, below that threshold. The 2 main ways are through, if you have an IRA, an adult retirement account, or if you have an HSA, which is a health savings account, which you can get with a lot of ACA plans. Like when you're looking through, it'll say, like, when you're filtering the plans, you can say, I want one that's HSA compatible. And so it's like you could put money into the HSA, and then that money is considered tax deductible. And so it it's subtracted from your MAGI income. But for some people, that's what they'll do. However, for a lot of people, like if you had several thousands of dollars to put into an IRA and HSA, again, you wouldn't need the subsidies in the first place, right? So,
and I will add for our audience, this is why I have an LLC. Because my MAGI is substantially lower than what I bring in because of the deductions that I can get as someone who's almost my entire life is related to my writing. And I imagine that's something that a lot of our audience can also look into.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there as well. I'm just, writing about the ACA is my job. So, so like I'm literally using the advice that I'm giving myself for the thing that I'm writing a post about.
This episode is brought to you by Factor.
Cold days, big goals, absolutely zero interest in cooking?
Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs.
No planning, no grocery math, no, what did I buy this ingredient for?
I love that Factor has quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats.
And there's so much variety. Over 100 rotating meals every week, including the new Muscle Pro meals, if you're doing strength stuff.
And they support your diet, whether it's high protein meals, Mediterranean, whole ingredients, healthy fats, or more. Plus, there are no refined sugars or artificial sweeteners.
I've looked for something like this for a long time, and Factor really is the best.
It's good food that tastes great and is ready in about 2 minutes, always fresh, never frozen, no prep, and no stress.
Head to factormeals.com/pastdue50off. That's 50 off.
And use code PASTDUE50OFF to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year.
Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. No bonus segment this week. This conversation felt too important not to share in full.
But if you want to help us keep making episodes like this, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/pastdue.
And hey, we totally get it if you can't support us financially right now. One way you can help us is leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And that's for free.
That's for free. And there's another free way to help. You could share this show with a friend and send them one of your favorite episodes. That kind of support is how we grow and helps more people hear these conversations. And you know what, Mike, we got to be honest, it helps us get advertisers.
That's true. And we know how you all love advertising. Thanks for listening to us do ad reads. Now, back to the episode.
One of the things we've talked about before on the show and emphasizing it again is however much money you're making as an artist, writer, creative in some way, it's probably worth it to have a bookkeeper and or a good accountant or I guess business manager because you will, I mean, my experience is I make back the few $1,000s I spend on those people by peace of mind and being sure to get my tax stuff like as beneficial as it can be to me.
And that's sort of what led me to my issue is that I do like I have an LLC and I have an S corp. And I have a business manager who manages literally all of that. And I haven't I'm typically not over their shoulder looking at what every decision they're making about how they prepare all of my stuff because I've been working with them for years and it's always been great. But I've learned as of this year that healthcare is a wrinkle in this because I'm not having them involved in my selection of plans. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening this time was that they prepared my taxes and, showed me my tax bill. And it was like, okay, it always sucks to have a tax bill, but right. I always have one. Okay. And then they asked me a couple more questions, specifically around health insurance, and then they had to sort of resubmit. And when they resubmitted, my tax bill doubled. And I was
Wow.
like, what is going on here? And that's when my business manager told me that due to how the ACA runs with my income, I had to pay back all of the tax credits. So like, that's just where I am, and there's nothing I could do about it. But it's like going forward, I don't necessarily know how to navigate it with what I make.
So I have a question. So is what happened you way underestimated your income for the past year?
I think so, but that's what I was saying too, is I think that I think I was just very set it and forget it. And I did this based on 2023 numbers, and it rolled over into 2024, and I just wasn't paying attention enough,
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is like, oh, I have to be way more on top of this, and I have to integrate my business management people with this way more for it to make any sense to me. And it already has my head spinning all the time.
Yeah, it does get complicated. I do need to add a caveat. Just to remember, I'm not an accountant myself, and I'm also not a tax lawyer. So, check with your accountant, check with your, tax attorney, whatever. So, take this with a grain of salt. But yeah, the HSA thing, the IRA thing, and then also if you are self-employed, you can deduct a certain portion of your actual premiums, and there's a cutoff. There's a threshold on that as well. But those are probably the three. If you're self-employed, those are probably the three biggest things I would look at to keep your income down. Your official managing income down, and that's true. That's not just if you're over 400%. That's also if you're less than 400%, it'll still allow you, make you eligible for higher tax credits as well. But again, the main thing is if you can't be sure, and of course, if you're self-employed, you can never be sure. But I would always overestimate rather than underestimate, because the worst case scenario is you'll make as much as you thought you did, and then you'll get what you thought you were going to get, as opposed to having the best case scenario there would be that you would get a windfall when you file your taxes in 2027, as opposed to having to pay back gobs of money they weren't expecting to.
Yeah, and this is just another, I guess, reminder. I mean, that if you don't do your open enrollment, you will be rolled over.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And is that what happened with you, Mike? Is you just
I think so.
Oh,
I believe so. That's like I wasn't. And I believe I got some notice that said, if you want to make any changes, do it by this time. And I was like, it's okay.
Right.
I'm not monitoring it close enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That is vitally important. Hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is vitally important. And it's more important this year than any other year.
Because of all the changes.
Right. Because of all these crazy changes. Because the thing is, every year the plans, even in a good year, even when they're not doing all sorts of sabotage, the plans change from year to year, right? Like the plan that you're on this year may not be available next year. They might your carrier might just discontinue it, or they may decide to pull out of your market. They'd say, well, we're not making enough money in this county, your state, and so we're going to pull out of there. Or a new carrier may come in and they may underprice, the competition, right? And so there's all these changes. So even if nothing changes at your end, your income is the same, your household's the same, you don't have any kids, you don't get married, you don't get divorced, whatever. There could still be some major changes, because the amount of your subsidy, the formula is based on what's called the benchmark plan, the benchmark silver plan. And what that is that's the second least expensive silver plan in your area. Okay. So let's say that there's, where you live, you go to healthcare.gov or whatever, you log in, you see there's 40 different plans. There's 10 bronze, 10 silver, 10 gold, 10 platinum, right? From several different carriers. At full price, whatever the second least expensive silver plan is in your area, that's what it's based on. And so what it does is it takes the difference between that and a percentage of your income. And whatever that difference is, that's your subsidy for the month. Okay. So let's say you earn, I'll make it simple. Let's say you earn exactly $50,000, right, per year. And right now, you only have to pay 8.5% of your income for the benchmark silver plan, which at $50,000, that's $354 per month. Okay, which I think it sounds like, I don't know, that's around, you said, around what you're paying this month. Now that would be for the benchmark plan. The difference, now let's say that the benchmark plan costs $500 per month, right? So it takes the difference, and you would be eligible for $146 per month in subsidies. And then you take that and you apply that towards any plan you want. You don't have to get a silver plan. You can get gold, you can get bronze, whatever. But that's how much you get. But the problem is, let's say that the benchmark plan this year goes up 20%. It's 20% higher than it was last year. Your subsidies will also go up 20%. Okay. But let's say that some newcomer comes in and they enter and they decide to undercut the competition. And now and because of all that, the benchmark plan is 10% less than it was last year. Then the subsidies will also be 10% low, right? And so on. Again, it gets a little wonky, it gets a little complicated, but the point is that the subsidy amount can change radically from year to year. And it's going to change radically this year or for 2026, because not only are they cutting you off at, if you're over 4 times poverty, but if you're below 4 times, which is the vast majority of enrollees are, below 400%, right? The vast majority of people, they're also making the subsidies less generous. So for example, if you're at 399%, right, just below that cutoff, right? And I mentioned that was, what did I say, 15,650 times 4. So let's say, $62,600 is 4 times. Let's say that you were at exactly $60,000, right? A little bit below that. In 2025, this year, you only have to pay 8.5% of that. In 2026, that's going to jump up to nearly 10%. Okay. So you're going to have to pay an extra, $1,500 or whatever at that income level for the benchmark plan. And those percentages, it's a sliding scale. So right now it runs from 0. In some cases, if you're below 150% of poverty, you don't have to pay anything. You pay 0% for the benchmark plan. And then it steadily goes up from 0% up to 8.5%, right? But that's changing to between 2.1% and 10%. And that may not sound like a big deal, but if you think about it, if right now you're paying nothing, and then you go to paying 2.1% of your income, okay, at 23, if you earn $23,000 a year, which is around 150%, that's around $500 a year. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but if you only earn $23,000 a year, $500 a year is a lot, right? And so on. So that's where you're seeing these examples that I've been posting and others have been posting about net premiums doubling or even tripling. If you go from having to pay 2% to paying 4% or 5%, well, that's 2.5 times what you're paying now, right? And so on. So it looks like small numbers, but those percentages add up to a huge dollar amounts for a lot of people, especially as in terms of you're choosing, do I pay my electric bill? Do I pay my, my rent? Do I pay for food? Or do I pay for my insurance? So even $50 a month may not sound like that much, but it's a lot if you don't earn that much.
Yeah, this is also depressing. This is all just making my head hurt and making my heart hurt. I had a couple of really practical things to ask about. One is something you've been promoting on Blue Sky a lot, I assume elsewhere on socials, which is this idea that you may be able to afford a gold plan if you're priced out of silver, right? That is, the gold plan might be actually more affordable for some people than silver. Do you want to explain that a little bit? Maybe not explain it too much, but
it gets really wonky. It sounds completely ass backwards. I know.
Maybe just give people the advice and not necessarily explain why it happens. Although you kind of did. It has to do with the pricing of that second tier, second lowest price silver.
the wonky behind the scenes reasoning for this gets really, really weird. And you said your father's an actuary, so like he would understand it. And it really doesn't take that long to explain, but I'm not going to, because it's still it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is that for reasons of actuarial and legal mumbo jumbo, there are some states, there's around 14 states that I found where they have either the state insurance commissioner or the carriers themselves, or in a couple of cases, there's actually been state legislation passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor that imposes what's something called premium, either silver loading or premium alignment, and it doesn't matter what it is. But what it is, it's a way of pricing the plans to maximize and leverage the subsidies, okay? And so what that means is, I mentioned before that the subsidy formula is based on the silver plan, right? On a particular silver plan. But you can use the subsidies for any plan, for bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So what they do is, it basically effectively jacks up the official price of silver a lot. But that also means the subsidies go up a lot, which also means that the gold and bronze plans can be priced lower than they normally would be. So what you do is you take your increased subsidy, and instead of buying a silver plan, you use it towards a gold plan or now a bronze plan. And what in these states, you can get gold plans, which normally would cost a lot more than silver, actually cost a lot less in many cases. Or bronze plans, which would normally cost, less than silver. In some cases, you can get them for like free, or for like, a nominal, $5 a month or whatever. And it's weird, and it sounds ass backwards, and is, but it's totally legal. Not only is it legal, it's actually more in line with the letter of the law from an actuarial and legal standpoint. It's actually more in line with how it's legislation worded. And so there's about a dozen states that are doing this, and some of them are being more aggressive about it than others. So there's some where you can get gold for the same as silver, and others where you can get it for less than silver. And so, what I'm advising, and I posted that blog post, but there's, I mentioned like Pennsylvania is one, New Mexico, Colorado, Maryland,
and some red states like Texas. Shockingly,
yes, Texas and Arkansas, of all things. Texas has been doing this for a few years. Arkansas is newly doing this, they're doing this for the first time for 2026, and they're leaning all in on it. And it's really, there's a whole story behind that. Somehow in Texas, not only is it a red state, that historically hates the ACA, right? The government legislation hates it, but they are actually they're the only red state that I know of that passed it through legislation. This wasn't like in Arkansas, the insurance commissioner sort of quietly did this behind the scenes. It's a sort of a regulatory thing. But in Texas, they actually passed a law, and it passed unanimously through a deep red state. And Governor Abbott, signed it along. There was no controversy. It just sort of quietly went through. And there's a whole story behind that. But the bottom line is that, there are states where you can get gold for less than silver and bronze for much, much less than silver. So, with the gold, you get, it has the lower deductibles and copays and stuff, right? With the bronze, you still have the really high deductibles, not a pocket cost, but if you can get it for dirt cheap, that helps, justify it for a lot of people. So check, and you should check this in every state, even if they're not on that list of 14. There are other states where gold might cost more, but it only costs a little more instead of a lot more, that sort of thing. So, but always check every year. And what you don't want to do is what you mentioned in the first place is, do not allow yourself to be passively re-enrolled into the same plan. You may still be better off doing that. You may be fine in the same plan, but check. Don't just let it happen automatically. Log into your account and, compare and shop around, see what's available, see what their subsidies are, see what the premiums are, see what the deductibles are, all that stuff. And check, because in a lot of cases, there may be a plan that is a better deal. And And the other thing, you mentioned that like the plan that you were on is no longer available.
Yeah.
A lot of times what will happen is the carrier, they won't leave the state entirely, which is what Aetna is doing, by the way. Aetna is leaving like a dozen states. They just said, we're out of here, and they pulled out of everywhere. In a lot of cases, they'll still be offering plans, but they'll change the plans they're offering. Like this plan isn't available, but this one is. And what they'll do is if your exact plan is not available next year and you take no action whatsoever, you will be automatically rolled over into the next closest plan from the same carrier. And there's a hierarchy. They'll say, well, first it has to stay the same carrier and the same metal level. If you're on silver through Blue Cross, they'll keep you at a different silver through Blue Cross. If you're on a PPO, they'll probably keep you on a PPO, that sort of thing. And if none of those are available, then they'll say, okay, next we'll try to move you into a silver plan with a different carrier, and that sort of thing. But you can see where the problem comes in with things like networks, right? What if your doctor is no longer, if they move you from Blue Cross or Aetna to Meridian or Oscar, well, what if your doctor's not in their network? What if your hospital isn't? What if you have a prescription drug that you need and it's not part of their formulary? You don't know. So yeah, you got to check all that. And I know I'm freaking people out.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I'm just like freaking out over my healthcare. Like, I don't have any idea how much I made this year. So I'm like fearful of getting like Mike's situation where like I took too many subsidies and now like I'm fucked at the end of the year. Although I'm already taking advantage of the installment plan to pay my taxes for last year. So
yeah, I kind of always am. I'm
more installments of my taxes. Woohoo! The other thing I wanted to ask is, I know you're not quite qualified or in a position to answer this question, so maybe you have to do it on vibes, but I think personally that everyone should have some insurance. Like, it's bad to withdraw from the marketplace entirely. But do you think that's good advice? Like, is there a situation where you would be like, yeah, just don't worry about it, or not, don't worry about it, but to
go uncovered?
Take the risk. Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, generally speaking, no. But
okay.
Okay. And here's where we get. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I think the part of the reason why the unsubsidized premiums are increasing, a lot more this year than they normally would, is because the congressional, the insurance carriers and the CBO and everybody is already anticipating that if these enhanced subsidies go away, that several million, as you mentioned, mostly younger, healthier people are probably just going to drop out, right? Because they don't have the income and it's too expensive, and I'm healthy and I'm young, and so they'll drop their coverage, and that in turn means that everybody left is going to be, sicker and more at risk on average. So they bump it up even more. So it's a self-fulfilling kind of thing in a way. Right. And I understand that, because if you're in your mid-20s and you're healthy and you're not like, out rock climbing or, working with, the nuclear reactor, exposed to radiation every day, I can understand that you think you're pretty low risk. But the problem is, you get hit by a bus or, diagnosed with some rare disease or something, and now you're screwed, right? So, I would not advise going there, but I can understand people making that judgment if they can't afford it. But I mean, I'm 55. And my wife and I were middle-aged, and we have a college-age kid. I know there are some people who are like, well, I'm healthy, but my spouse has serious medical problems. So, they'll get insurance and I'll go there and just drive really carefully. It's not a wise thing to do, but I understand that it puts people in a very difficult position. So yeah. And that is actually one of the things that the enhanced subsidies were put into place, was partially to encourage, younger, healthy people. Because that's the thing, is you want as many young, healthy people enrolled to reduce the risk pool, so that, it spreads the risk to as wide a base as possible. So no, I mean, I cannot in good conscience advise going bare. What the Trump administration is, and I'm trying not to get political, but I kind of have to. They have been trying.
No reason to stop. I mean, we're not going to stop you.
They tried doing this in the first Trump administration. Was they only, because the ACA did not, technically speaking, it did not make any type of junk plan, basically shit insurance. It didn't make it illegal in most cases. What it did say is, in order to be ACA compliant, it's like, THX certified, right? For the sound system, it said in order to, here's the levels, here's the regulations, the requirements that every ACA certified plan has to include. No, cannot deny coverage, pre-existing conditions, can't vary, can't charge you more for being a woman, all the bullet points of the stuff that it did. It has to meet all these specifications. And if it doesn't, then number one, you are not eligible for any financial help, right? That if you buy a junk plan, you have to pay full price for it, right? If that's what you're going to do. And number two, you may recall the infamous mandate penalty, right? That is has been gone for years now, but that was very, very controversial for years. It said that you had to have ACA compliant coverage, and if you don't, then you would have to pay. A penalty for that. Well, the penalty's gone, so there's nothing stopping anyone from buying, from enrolling in a junk plan or, ministry plan, or they call them different things, short-term plans, whatever. But if you do, you will no longer be penalized financially, but you also do not receive any financial help. And what the Trump administration has been trying to do is they've been trying to open the floodgates on junk plans by loosening the rules or removing the rules. And in some cases, they were even talking about providing ACA subsidies to people enrolled in junk plans, which defeats the entire point. And I don't know if that's what they're trying to do, but when Trump went on his rant a week or so ago saying, "Oh, we should take the money away from the insurance and give it directly to people," right?
Yeah, that's what that is.
Well, I'm not sure. It's hard with him. It's hard to say because you can never understand exactly what he means. But it seems there's a possibility that what they're talking about is giving the subsidy money directly to people and then allowing them to use it to buy junk plans, which basically, once again, do not have to cover you if you have a pre-existing condition, can charge you more if you have certain conditions, don't have to include coverage of this, that, and the other, can charge more if don't have to include maternity care or pediatric care, etc. All the stuff that the ACA was scratching off the list. A lot of those plans, it takes you right back to that. And again, that would completely undermine the whole point of the ACA, essentially.
So I'm going to frame it this way, which is kind of a yes or no question, which again, I'm not sure if you can even answer, but is there any situation in which getting the shittiest bronze plan is going to be better idea than going without?
Yes.
Or getting a worse idea? Wait. So the shittiest bronze plan is better than going without?
In many cases, yes.
Okay. In many cases.
Okay. I'll tell you. Well, okay. So one thing that the Trump administration, I'll go you one better. The Trump administration, one of their big responses earlier this summer was they did open the floodgates on what are called catastrophic plans, which are ACA compliant. You can get them on the exchange, but until now, those were restricted to. They're basically like below bronze, okay, or a similar level to bronze. Up until now, those you had to be under 30 years old. Okay, in order, if you're over 30, it won't even show up on the screen, as an option. If you enter that your age is over 30, if you're under 30, it'll show up as a catastrophic bronze, silver, gold, platinum. So you had to be under 30, or if you're over 30, there would be a really special circumstance. You have to file a big form, like a hardship exemption, special circumstances kind of thing. What they've done is they've said, going forward, anyone who isn't eligible for subsidies can buy a catastrophic plan instead. Okay. So they remove that 30 or under limit. Now, that doesn't change the plans. It doesn't make the plans any better. It just means that, yeah, if you want to go to the bottom of the barrel, you can get this. The upside is that even a bronze plan or even a catastrophic plan does have a maximum out-of-pocket limit, which means the deductible or the max out-of-pocket, it may be $20,000, which is huge, but as long as you stay in network, as long as your doctors and hospitals and, whatever care that you get is in that network, that is the maximum you'd have to pay. Now, that's a lot of money, but it's still not 100,000 or $1 million. It does still cut off how much the absolute maximum under you hit by a bus and diagnosed with cancer on the same day, right? It does provide some level of, it's called catastrophic coverage if you have a catastrophe. Now, the problem with that, and if you're younger, then in most cases, like a worst case scenario, go bronze, go to the bottom barrel, go to bronze, go to catastrophic. That may be the best solution for your situation. If you're healthy, you're young, but the real problem is if you're older, if you're say 50 or older, like you said you are, like I said I am. If you're older, you can be charged 3 times, like a 64-year-old can be charged 3 times as much at face value. This is unsubsidized as a 21-year-old. Okay, that's the 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, because older people tend to be sicker, tend to be more expensive, younger people tend to be healthier, et cetera. So you can be charged 3 times as much. If you earn that, the worst case scenario is someone who is 64 years old, right at the upper edge of that, just before Medicare eligibility. They're 64 years old and they earn 401% of poverty, right? Just over the cutoff and at the very highest end of that 3-to-1 ratio. That's where I don't know if you've seen these bar charts that I've been posting for months now, but where they show these different scenarios, different households. And the one on the far right is always it's a 63-year-old couple, right, who earns like $90,000 a year, which is a little bit over 4 times poverty for 2 people. In some extreme cases, the most extreme edge case I found was in a particular county in West Virginia. West Virginia has the most expensive ACA, premiums in the country. There's a particular county in West Virginia where a 64-year-old couple earning, just over 4% would have to pay, in theory, $5,300 per month for their premiums alone. Okay, for the benchmark plan, which is like 75% of their gross income, which of course nobody would do. Which of course they would have to drop their coverage. In scenarios like that, where you're basically in your 50s, mid to high 50s or low 60s, even the bronze plan or even the catastrophic plan may still cost, a couple $1,000s a month, in some scenarios. Now, paying $2,000 versus $5,000 is certainly, it's still a lot better than $5,000, but still, that's still pretty fucking expensive for a, basically a shit plan, But when I say shit, like I said, it's still ACA compliant. It's still a lot better than a non-ACA compliant plan where they don't have to cover you at all.
I want to get back to this basic question. Mm-hmm. Some coverage through ACA is going to be, when in doubt, I would say it sounds like you should go ahead and get that bronze coverage if that's all you can afford.
Yes, I'm saying this very hesitantly because I understand, but yes, I would still err on the side of having that catastrophic coverage at a bare minimum.
Okay.
Because you just never know.
Okay. All right. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. And I'm sure that there's more for people to learn on your website if they want to get really down into the nitty-gritty of it. The 2 things I learned are, don't just let things roll over.
Yes.
Go and check. Be on top of how much you make.
Yep.
And look for some coverage.
Yes.
I learned everything because I didn't know any of this. It was all learning. 100% learning.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Charles.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Now, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. No way.
See, I'm never going to stop laughing.
But it's
never. Because when are you going to stop? When is it going to stop being the number one thing you promote? When do you have the next album?
It already stopped.
Oh, okay.
Stopped.
So what's the number? Okay.
Well, I guess the number one
Newsflash
thing
to me.
okay.
What's the number one thing you're promoting?
This artist residency that I just got announced for in Chicago. I'm the artist as instigator for the National Public Housing Museum for 2026. We're doing a year-long project called The Sound of the Brick Body Complex. And we're doing a kickoff event in Chicago, December 4th. That's a Thursday, and it's free.
So are you going to be moving to Chicago for the year?
I am not doing that.
Okay.
I am going to be doing a series of events. We haven't nailed down exactly when those are going to happen yet over the course of the year. But the museum itself is in Chicago, so we'll be collaborating all year long.
Okay. Well, we both love Chicago. You're from there. I've spent a lot of time there. So I would be excited to be there, although maybe not in the coming months.
Yeah, it's a tough time. Tough time to kick off something in Chicago, but darn it, that's when it's happening.
Anything else? Mike, do you have anything else going on that people might want to know about?
I do all sorts of stuff. I'm on Twitch 3 days a week doing the morning show. Also doing a YouTube channel that's flourishing. We're about 800 subscribers away from 50,000 over there. So if you enjoy rap discourse and more, you can check me out over there. Just look up Open Mike Eagle on all of the stuff. And Anna, what you got going on?
Well, I have a new workshop starting in February. The Slow Burn. Well, it's an old workshop. It's going to be the second iteration of it, called The Slow Burn, Creating a Sustainable Writing Practice, which I think is very much, it's about sustaining any kind of creative practice. I think anyone who's listening to this podcast has gone through a moment where their creativity does not feel sustainable. So this workshop is about that. And then I am doing a NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month writing group that has been so popular. I'm extending it into December, and it's free. And just go to my website, annmariecox.com, and you can sign up to join me for an hour in the morning of just silent writing. It's just writing together. And we do a little 5-minute break at the end to brag on ourselves about whatever it is we got done. And that in itself is very sustaining. Oh, and science fiction podcast, Space the Nation. And, I do have a newsletter that I got to do a bonus episode about this. Got mentioned in the New York Times.
Hey, how about that?
At the exact time that I cannot monetize because the Stripe connection between Button Down and Stripe is somehow not working.
That sounds very annoying.
But you can go to annmariecox.com/newsletter and you'll get it for free because that's the only way that I can provide it to people right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's hope that changes soon.
All right. Yes, let's hope. And I guess on some other note, we're doing great. Have a happy holiday. Sign up for ACA. And until next time.
Have fun.
I think you got to do better than have fun.
That's a low bar. So anybody can reach it.
Not all darkness is dangerous. Sometimes it's the doorway to becoming whole. On the brand new podcast, The Shadow Sessions, hosted by me, Hibab Al-Faqih, a psychologist and trauma expert, we shed light on the hidden corners of the human experience. Through raw, unfiltered conversations from the edge of healing, The Shadow Sessions invites you to do the deeper work that leads to real change. Follow The Shadow Sessions wherever you're listening now.
Sometimes it feels like red and blue states are just as divergent as post-World War II East and West Germany. So what can the US learn from German political history in order to create a more perfect union? Find out on the new season of The Future of Our Former Democracy, the Signal Award-winning podcast from More Equitable Democracy and Large Media. Hosted by me, Colin Cole, and Heather Villanueva. It's time to rethink democracy. So follow The Future of Our Former Democracy wherever you get your podcasts.